Hello and welcome. In this video, I'll show you how I turn my traditional artwork to art prints without using a scanner. And I'll show you how to do all of this by just using an iPad. The programs that I use are Adobe Photoshop and Lightroom, or you could use any free photo editing program such as GIMP. Editing here, if you're following along using your iPad, I did not realize GIMP is only available on desktop. There is no app version. I instead found a good free alternative called Sketchbook. Sketchbook has all the tools that you'll need to follow along with this tutorial. It also has a lot of good features just in its free version, and it's only $2 to upgrade to premium, and that's a one-time payment. Another good alternative is Procreate. Procreate is a one-time payment of $10, and it has a lot of similar features to Adobe Photoshop, and it's a really good drawing app. Another cheap alternative is Adobe Fresco. Adobe Fresco is subscription-based, but it's only $10 a year. And Adobe Fresco is what I've been creating a lot of my more recent digital art in. Perhaps later I'll make another video comparing different drawing apps. Adobe Lightroom, there is a free version on mobile. You do not need to pay for Lightroom Premium to do anything that I am showing you today. I used to make art prints and I didn't really do much digitizing of my artwork. And my definition of digitizing is taking a photo of your work and cleaning it up in a photo editing software. Because when you make your prints, you're going to want them to be clean, even lighting, which is hard to get straight from a photo. I will be showing how I remove the backgrounds, and even especially for one like this where I have all the paint splatter, I'll be able to remove the background and still keep all that in. I will also be showing how I make a fake paper texture. For some of my color pencil drawings, I've used toned paper, and I kind of want to retain that look. I just feel like it makes it more true to my original vision. After I go over how I digitize my work from a photo, I will also be going over how I take old artwork that I no longer have because I've either sold it, got lost, whatever, but I uploaded it to Instagram, and when you upload to Instagram, the size quality goes way down. I'll show you how I take a screenshot of my old artwork on Instagram, upscale it by hand in Photoshop or any photo editing software. The first step is to take a picture of your artwork. Make sure to take your picture in good lighting. You could use natural lighting. Any bright lamp will work. I'm using a white LED grow light, but don't worry too much about your lighting because I'll be showing you how I color correct my pictures. One thing I found was using the flash, especially with some mediums, it will reflect the light too much. Now that I've taken my pictures, I'm going to go into Photoshop, create a new canvas. You're going to want to make the canvas the exact size of your final print. For the series that I am currently doing, I am making everything 5 by 7 inches. Another important thing to do is to make sure your resolution is at least 300 ppi, which is points per inch. If you want to know more about that in depth, there are tons of YouTube videos on it. But basically, when printing, it's how many dots are in an inch of the print. And the higher that is, the better the resolution will be. For mine, I usually put it at 600 ppi, but at least 300 is recommended. The first process I'm going to show is if you want a pure white background. So you're going to want to import your photo. You can size it up to fill out the screen. And then from there, I'm going to remove just the white background here. Go into our selection tools, select Magic Wand. Make sure you choose the second option with the 2 boxes merging together. This will allow you to select multiple areas and have it all be part of the same selection. Once you selected all the background, you're going to go into Refine Edge and change view mode to overlay. This will give you a good picture of everything that you have selected. And as you can see, I'm going to want to go back in and deselect those paint splatters and then select right here between the birds. Subtract my selections and select inside, go back to Refine Edge, select overlay again. And some of the splatters didn't, like the little splatters didn't get selected, but I am okay with that. You can play around with all these settings until you're happy with the selection. And then what I like to do is just very slightly feather the selection, smooth it, and this will just make it look more natural. Hit done. I always forget to flatten the layer. Flattening the layer will allow you to manipulate it. And then just in case, I always make a duplicate of it just so I can go back to something. With your background selected, you're just going to hit erase. That erases the background. And then from here, you can deselect and then erase anything left behind. And then from here, you're going to want to create another layer underneath this layer and fill it with just plain white. And now we're going to take this and we're going to export it and we're going to bring it into Lightroom. All we need is the free version. We do not need to pay for premium. And here you're just going to play with some of the light, color, texture, and detail settings. For this one, I'm just going to up the exposure on this. In the color section, I usually only play with the vibrance. The temperature setting is good for when you take pictures in like warm or cooler lighting. The lighting I used, I have a LED grow light. And effects, you can play around with the texture and that kind of soften, like especially if your paper is a bit too textured. I don't want to completely get rid of the paper texture. I still want to leave some of it in, but I don't want it to be too harsh. And from there, you can even play with the sharpening, and then noise reduction is extremely useful for removing some graininess, especially if your camera quality isn't the best. You can go into the history settings on the side and flip between the original and your current one. Once you're happy with your settings, you're going to save a copy, bring the photo you just edited back into Photoshop. From here, you can do as much editing as you want, or you don't have to move any further. I like to just touch up a few areas just to enhance it, to make it look more clean. And what I like to do is I always make my edits on a new layer, just in case I did do a little bit too much editing or whatever, so I always have the original there. For my watercolor paintings, I always do a black ink outline, and I like to just enhance it a bit, especially when taking photos with the lighting and the black ink, it reflects it. You kind of lose some of that sharp blackness, so I will just go in and just go back over the black lines with a black ink brush. You can also touch up some of the colors, like usually I will darken the eyes. Photoshop, the mobile version, comes with quite a few good brushes I use. I haven't bought any brushes I don't really need because we're not really doing like a digital painting. We're really just touching it up. I'll fix some inconsistencies like down here. The photo I took reflected a lot of this down here because it was color pencil. You know, you don't have to do too much editing. You can do as little or as much as you want, just until, you know, you're satisfied with it. For some areas, like my splatter areas, I usually don't like to paint over them. Instead, I will go into the adjustment tools and I'll use the dodge tool. And this will brighten it up a bit. Up here, I just feel like that's a little too dark and muddy and makes it less dark. I like this one too, just makes it a little less muddy. And then already we really didn't do too many different edits. You know, we just brightened it up. The picture I took, the lighting isn't great. So this is how I can take this photo and enhance it so it's ready for prints. Next thing that I want to show is how I create a fake paper background. This is especially useful for when you want to keep the original paper still with the design. So we're going to follow the same steps that we did in the first one. Select your background, erase it. So once you remove the background and have just your subject, to create the paper texture, what I like to do is I like to select one of the light regions of my paper, and we're going to fill our background with that color. And then you're going to select a darker region of the paper on a new layer above the background. In Photoshop, it already has a add paper texture brush, and I like to use that. And on this new layer, you're just going to fill in the back, and it just gives it a slight texture feel to it. And then you can adjust the opacity, and that's how you create a fake paper background. The only difference in Lightroom when I do a paper background is I like to, under effects, I like to add some slight grain to it. And this just gives it a bit more of like a paper grit. And that also depends on the type of paper you want to portray. Then you're just going to do the same techniques that I showed until you're happy with the final piece. As you can see here, I didn't do too many changes. I wasn't happy with the original color. I wanted to just make it a bit more blue. So those are some of the more major changes I made. And the final thing that I want to show is how you can follow these same steps to create a print from a screenshot. This is useful for when you no longer have the artwork and let's say you've only uploaded it to Instagram or anywhere online and you don't have a nice quality photo of it. What I did with this pink robin, this was the only picture I had of it from my Instagram. I just took a screenshot of it, followed the same steps that I mentioned before. I got rid of the background. I adjusted the photo in Lightroom, painted over it until I got this. When doing this, you're going to do a lot more over painting, which requires a bit more of a digital drawing skill. And of course, will be easiest if you're using an iPad or a drawing pad or anything that, because you will be utilizing the brushes more. So once you're done digitizing your prints, if the printing service you're using already prints at your size, you probably don't need to follow the next steps. The printing company that I'm currently using is FedEx. I use FedEx mainly because there's a FedEx right down the road. I found their prices and paper quality to be the best for my current budget. I can make one print for about $1.50. And for these prints, I can fit 2 prints on 1 page. And after this, I will go over that process specifically with FedEx. All we need to know right now is that I will be printing on an 8.5 by 11 inch page. And what you're going to do in Photoshop, again, you will create the exact size of the paper you are printing on. Make sure the resolution is at least 300. When you import your Photoshop photo, it is going to be true to size, since our document is also true to size. In this case, 11 by 8.5 inches. My 5 by 7 photos are going to be 5 by 7 on this page. The only drawback to mobile version of Photoshop is there's no roller. Aligning these will be much easier on a desktop version, but all you really need to be aware of is, depending on your printing company, the paper I use there will always be at least a small white border. It does not print to the edge of the page like in this one. You can see, I want to say it's 1/4 inch is the margin. So just be aware of that. Do not line up your photos to the edge. It will get cut off. Depending on the size of your print, you can fit however many. For the way I'm printing them, they offer 8.5 by 11 inches or 11 by 17 inches. I fit 2 prints on 1 page, left some white space in between. Eventually I'll be cutting this. My FedEx has a paper cutter, but I also have my own paper cutter. But once you set up the document that you will be printing, this is going to be specifically for FedEx. So if you're not using FedEx, you can skip this. But if you do want to try out FedEx, I'd recommend it, especially if you're starting out. It's very cheap, and they offer a bunch of different types of papers. So on FedEx's main site, you're going to go to Design and Print, Copies and Custom Documents. Don't worry about the paper type or size. You can change that after this. Just upload your file. Once your document is uploaded, you'll see a preview there. This is where you can go into your options, change the size. Oh, see, I didn't even know this, because for some reason on the first page, they do not list everything they have. Like the size is they only list 8.5 by 11 and 11 by 17. I did not know they had an 8.5 by 14. So glad I checked that. But anyway, the paper that I'm using, 8.5 by 11. The paper type, again, they have a bunch of different ones. The one that I'm using now is 110-pound index. The index paper is just, it feels sturdy enough for a print. You can frame it. It doesn't have like a gloss coating on it or anything. So it looks more natural. If you can see, there's like a slight shine to it. So it does have some reflective qualities. Other paper that I have used is matte cover paper, which I felt was good for like my digital art. This has a matte coating on it, so it's a bit more reflective, less natural looking, I guess. The index paper looks and feels more natural, and then you don't have to do anything else. And as you can see, it's $1.31 for 1 print, well, for 2 prints if you're able to fit more than 1 on each paper. Another thing I forgot to mention about FedEx is when you order prints for pickup, most of the time they are ready that same day. And this is very useful for me, especially just starting out, as I don't have to keep stock. I only need to make print orders as I need. Once you have your prints, you're going to want to cut them out, either removing the white border, or if you're doing what I'm doing and putting more than one print on a page, you're going to want to cut them out. My FedEx does have a paper cutter on site. The paper cutter I just got from Michaels. I think it goes up to 9 inches. They do come in bigger sizes. I like this one. It's nice. It's cheap. It comes with a score attachment too, but I've since lost that. It's perfect for smaller prints. If you made it this far, thank you so much for watching. I hope that my videos helped anyone with their process of making their own art prints. Feel free to leave a comment below with any tips, or feel free to discuss how you create your art prints. I know that buying a bunch of equipment is very expensive, especially a scanner. I found this to be the best option that I have now, and I hope that this also helps someone who's just starting their creative business. But that's it for today. Thank you for sticking around. I'm not too sure of what type of content I will be making in the future, but for right now, I'm just enjoying showing my art process as I try to build an online following and start up my online art business. So thank you again for sticking around, and I'll see you in the next one.